Hello, welcome to the Craft House Magic Set of tutorials. Today I'm going to show you how to make this little scissor case with a clear side to it so you can see what's in there. It's got a zipped edge on one side, a clear pocket on one side, and then you've got some really pretty Liberty fabric on the other. So what you will need is 3 different fabrics. Well, you could go with 2 different fabrics if you wanted to, but I'm using the lovely fabrics that have come in this month's Fat Quarter bundle. These are the monthly Fat Quarter bundles that I choose from Liberty Fabrics. There'll be another set out in October. But I'm going to put together some kits which include sort of the thread and the ribbon and zips and the plastic and the wadding that you'll need, as well as the fabrics. So I will include these 3 pattern pieces in a PDF file that I will have on my website. So I've got the larger piece which goes on the back of the case and sort of the edging, and we've got a lining piece, the plastic and the wadding at this smaller pattern piece here, and then we have 1 piece of fabric which is from this pattern piece here, which I will use to attach it to the zip. So I've put aside all the other pieces apart from the lining, the wadding, the outer fabric and the zip. So first of all, I'm going to line up the lining fabric on top of the wadding like so. I'm going to place my outer fabric right faced up, and then I'm going to put my zip right face down on top of it. Now this zip is massive, you need at least 6 inches length, but these are the ones I've got in stock that go really well with the fabric, so I'm going to use these ones. So I'm going to place my zip over the top of that, lining up this edge piece. I've got the wrong side up of the zip and the right side facing up of the fabric. I've got my lining fabric and my wadding held together. I'm going to line up this straight edge with the top edge of the fabric here. So what I'm doing is just making sure that there's about 3/4 of an inch on both sides. If it doesn't exactly meet 3/4 of an inch, just make sure you've got an even amount of fabric either side. So I'll show you that from the top. There's about 3/4 of an inch either side of the lining piece and the wadding on top of the outside piece. Now that's all lined up, I'm going to put some pins across the top to hold it in place, and we're going to stitch along here with a zipper foot. Obviously you need to make sure that you're not too close to where the teeth, the zip is. What you need to do is, if you actually stitch it from the side where the outer fabric is showing rather than where the actual wadding is. So if you stitch here next to the zip using a zipper foot, making sure that you're at least a couple of millimeters away from the teeth of the zip. Only so the zip to the lining fabric, not all the way along, because that bit you need to fold in later. I'm just stitching along where the lining panels are. Stitch all the way across the lining fabric and don't include the outer fabric. So when you are sewing your zip in, I would recommend reducing your pressure foot tension, because it will reduce any sort of drag on the fabric and it will stop the fabric from moving on top of your zip as you're stitching that in. And I'm going to open that out and finger press it closed. I'm going to do the same on this side as well. So now you can see that it's sort of coming together. What I am going to do is give this a press to keep it nice and flat, and top stitch this just across 1/4 of an inch from this seam just across here, just to hold it in place. Right, you've now got a top stitch line across there which shows up at the back here, and you've got this bit sort of loose away from the zip, because you'll need that to be loose to sort of fold the zip in the following steps. So what we want to do is fold it in half like that, press it, and then fold the 2 edges in, press it again, and then press it closed like this, and this will be used to bind the plastic section. So I'm going to give this a press on the iron. So this piece should be 1/2 inch wide once you've got those edges all folded in. Right, so now this has cooled down just for a few seconds after I've pressed it. I'm just opening that back up again and putting that straight edge, which I suppose you can see the what shape the plastic is because it's difficult to see, but it's basically the same shape as this piece that we had, but in plastic, and you want to do the top straight edge inside, right inside that piece of binding you've made, so that goes right over the edge of the plastic. I'm just going to use some clips just to hold it in place. You don't want to use pins at this point because you don't want to pierce the actual plastic. So I'm going to go over to the sewing machine and just stitch 1/8 of an inch all along there just to enclose the actual plastic. Just make sure you've got both edges meeting the same point of the plastic so that when you stitch through it, it's catching both edges and enclosing the thing completely. Right, so here's my piece that I've enclosed one side with the binding, and what I want to do is attach it to this side of the zip. But before I do that, I'm just going to use a heat erasable pen just to mark where the edges of this lining piece come to, and I'm going to transfer that over to this side to make sure it's lined up, and then I can use those spots to line up on here so that I've got it as central as possible. So I'm just placing this so that it's equidistant from the teeth of the zip compared to the other side, so it looks nice and neat. I'm going to have to use 2 clips at either end because obviously we don't want to pin the plastic, and then I'm going to open the zip and pop one in the middle as well to keep it in place, making sure that it's equally distant all the way across. You could measure this if you wanted to, but I'm just eyeballing it. So just readjusting this side. So there we are. I'm going to now stitch 1/8 of an inch from the edge of this binding all the way across that side to secure it in place. Right, now you can see that the 2 panels are attached to the zip, and what I suggest you do is put your zip in the position where it's sort of halfway in the middle of where it is going to close up, if that makes sense, because we need to remove some of this zipper tape because it's way too long. So you can do this with any sort of length of zip that you've got, but you will need at least 6 inches. I'm going to take my rotary cutter. Now this rotary cutter I just use specifically for non-fabrics. I use this for card as well, so I wouldn't recommend using your rotary cutter which you're going to be using for fabric to do this. I'd use the scissors. So I'm going to cut it off at the length, same length as the lining fabric here, like that. Just absolutely make sure your zipper pull stays in the middle until we've completely enclosed the edges and it won't run off the end, because that is a bit of a nightmare having to put the zipper pull back on. So you can fold that over and you can see now that the plastic piece lines up with the lining fabric inside. So what you'll need to do to start with is, if you just ignore the zipper tape to start with, so if you finger press that fabric, fold it in so it meets the lining on each of the edges. And I'm going to get my iron out and make sure that these edges are all pressed nicely. We will be doing a mitered corner on this edge in a little bit, but just to set these seams all nice and crisp, I'm going to press those before we get to the next bit. So whatever you do, do not press near your plastic. I'm actually keeping that to the other side when I'm pressing these edges in. So I am cutting this zipper tape a little bit shorter so that it is the length of the folded in piece here. Otherwise it's difficult to fold it in, I think, so I'm just folding it in a little bit more. Careful you don't actually cut the fabric from behind. I'm tucking that away before I'm cutting. There we are. There'll be less bulk to sort of tuck away behind here. So you can tuck this side bit of the zip in by hand if you want to, but I find it is quite fiddly. So instead of doing that, I'm folding in the side of the zip, so it's going to be folded in like this, so just along the edge of the lining, and I'm going to tack it in place as close to the edge of that bit as possible, so that you know when you wrap this around, you're sort of stitching the other side of where the tape lies. So it doesn't matter what colour thread you use. I've just used some white thread here so that you can hopefully see a little bit better. So I have tacked that bit of the zip. You don't need it to be super neat, but just so that it goes in on the lining, you don't want to stitch through to the outside of the fabric. So just a few little stitches there to make sure that it's secured in, and it just makes life easier when you're pinning the next bit. These stitches will be completely enclosed, just helps you hold it in place. So now you've tacked that bit of the zip to the end there, you can fold the ears left from the zip around the outside of the wadding and lining fabric. Fold the top edge in and fold that binding edge that you've created at the side there, and use a clip to hold it in place. Now you need to do the same to the other side. Right, so now we've got both ends of the zips attached. So I've just folded the ends over the edges of the zip here and put a clip on that, and then we just need to fold in the edges all the way around, just apart from this like right angle corner, which I'm going to work with in a minute. So these edges just fold in. You can't really do a mitered corner on these not 90-degree edges, so I'm just working along the edges, folding all the fabric in. When you get to the corner, I would just open up that corner and cut the corner of that fabric off, so that the corner is 1/4 of an inch from the diagonal cut. I've just pressed it down 1/4 of an inch on the end so that it's in line with this corner and over the top of that corner. And I need to put into place the press marks that we'd already done when we folded it in, and then I'm going to fold each of the edges in and put a clip on it. And with any luck, you should have a nice mitered corner there. Just takes a little bit of fiddling around and some more clips. It's a little bit annoying that you can't really press it once the plastic is sort of in there. You can't press on top of the plastic, otherwise it will melt. I'm just going to peg all the way around. Just make sure that you've got everything sort of straight before you do the next stitchy bit. So I think I'm happy with that. It might take a little bit of fiddling to get it into place, but once you've done that, you can then top stitch 1/8 of an inch from the edge of this binding to secure it in place. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little tab for the actual zip. So I'll fold some ribbon over and push it through the little hole in the zipper pull and knot it. So I've just cut the ends diagonally because it looks nice. And I'll just use either a lighter or a soldering iron just to finish those off so that they don't fray. So there we are, there's the finished scissor case. Different size scissors can fit in it. I've got this, these are some of the scissors that I sell in my shop, and they all fit. But of course you could change the size of the scissor case to fit whatever scissors you're using. So there we go. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye!